And I did that in a variety of other areas. I did that with the Marine One helicopter being purchased out of Sikorsky. And so for military expenditures and other expenditures. And I believe that very substantial savings can occur if we keep an eye on it. And let me just give you a final story with regard to the Advanced Seal Delivery System. I was able to secure several millions of dollars for a company located in Texas and in Connecticut to come up with a mini-sub that would be a prototype for an ASDS. The company was managed by former Navy personnel, and for $5 million, they produced a fully operational mini-sub that had a range, I believe, of 200 miles, that could go 112, 115 feet underwater safely with folks on board. And so not only did we terminate a program that was incredibly expensive, but we replicated, in some respects, the mission requirements through the private sector in a very efficient way. And that motivates me, and that's what I enjoy doing and I've liked doing as a member of Congress, and that will certainly motivate me as a member of the U.S. Senate. It's not in as much trouble as it was back then.
So, to clarify this, you will introduce a bill to restructure the unfunded liability under a receivership type of arbitration.
With your assistance, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with your assistance.
Deb Stevenson from National Home Education Legal Defense. I ought to know by now. Thank you, Deb. Hey, incidentally, let me say, while he's still standing back here, I didn't introduce the mayor of Newington, who's in the back of the room, Jeff Wright, who's also a candidate for governor and a man who I think makes a lot of sense. Thanks for coming out, Jeff.
He's the right guy for the job.
Mr. Simmons, my question to you is, please state your understanding of the 10th Amendment and explain what role it plays in your job as U.S. Senator.
Now let me read it. Let me speak back. She said, please explain my understanding of the 10th Amendment and how it affects my role as a member of Congress. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively, and this is probably the most important part, reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Thank you. To the people.
Yeah.
To the people. I will now pull out my copy of Barry Goldwater's Conscience of a Conservative. I know most of you in the room are too young to know who Barry Goldwater was. But I worked for him for 4 years. I was his chief of staff when he headed up the Senate Intelligence Committee. He wrote this book in 1960. It's so small that I carry it around in my briefcase. And what he said is, the federal government has moved into every field in which it believes its services are needed. The federal government has moved into every field in which it believes its services are needed. To me, the 10th Amendment is fairly clear, and the Constitution itself is fairly clear. It designates certain powers to the federal government, and those that aren't expressly reserved to the federal government reside with the states and with the people. And I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to law school. And so what I've tried to do in my days as an elected official is to keep a copy of the Constitution available. Sometimes people make fun of me for doing it. But I do read it, I do look at it, and I do think about it, and I do think about its application. There's no question in my mind that the federal government has exceeded its brief in certain areas. So now the question is, what are we going to do about it? And the answer is, push back. Certainly the government takeover of health care, removing our choice from health care, I think was excessive. And I think the people not only in this state, but throughout the country pushed back against that. And I don't really know what the state of play is today. Where do you think we stand with the government takeover of health care? Is it moving forward?
Finish.
All those say it's moving forward, please raise your hand. Is it temporarily stopped and going to start again? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
All those who think it's dead, raise your hand. Okay. Well, eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. And I think that bears watching. But in any event, that's my effort to try to abide by the 10th Amendment of the Constitution.
My follow-up question would be,
Yes.
what would you be doing as a senator to make sure that every law that comes before you is one that is authorized by the Constitution and not reserved to the states?
Yeah. Well, I think that's... Do you hear the question? What do you do as a member of Congress to make sure that every law that comes before you is consistent with what we've just said about the Constitution and the 10th Amendment? Let me describe for a moment the legislature, whether it's the Connecticut General Assembly or whether it's the House of Representatives in Washington or the Senate in Washington. The Connecticut General Assembly is 151 members of the House, 36 members of the Senate. The House of Representatives in Washington, D.C. is 435 members, and the Senate's 100 members. Now, these folks come from a wide variety of backgrounds. These organizations are not necessarily known for their efficiency. That's right. And the businessmen are going to laugh at that. But they're not known for their efficiency because they were not designed for efficiency. They were designed for equity. They were designed to promote debate and discussion. And I can assure you that whether it was in the State House or in the Congress, there are multiple people who have multiple eyeballs on this legislation on a regular basis. That bad things happen when things are done quickly, or when they're done secretly, or when we're told, you don't have time to read the bill. Just vote for it. That's when bad things happen. And that's why I made it a practice, to the best of my ability, not to vote for any bill that I didn't have a chance to read. If I don't have a chance to read it, vote no. But I will also say that there are watchdogs of freedom in the Connecticut General Assembly. There are not enough of them. There are watchdogs of freedom in the House of Representatives. Not enough of them these days. Representative Barr comes to mind, and others, that screen bills, that examine bills, and that speak out if these issues are present. In the House, for example, every piece of legislation that comes to the floor must go through the Rules Committee. Unlike the Senate, the House rules require that every bill that's taken up on the House floor has to come through the Rules Committee, and the Rules Committee has to cut a rule for the bill. And the rule for the bill describes the amount of time you're going to have and the amendments that are going to be offered. And the only way that you can avoid that process is through unanimous consent. And one person can object. Of the 430 members, the 5 members from the territories can't vote. But of the 430 members, any member can object to a unanimous consent agreement to take up a bill that has not come through the regular procedure and the regular process. I am more than willing to object in such a situation.
So my question was, what action would you personally take to ensure that each law that comes before you is constitutional?
I read bills. My staff reads bills. I don't vote for bills that I haven't read. That's an action in and of itself. If I don't think it meets the requirement, I will vote no. I think that's the best I can do.